everyone. Welcome back to Divorce Den. We'll bring you real conversations about real relationships and issues that you might be having, including issues that you might be having with divorce. And navigating those relationships, especially during the transition of divorce, can be difficult on a good day. But when you add in any type of issues like finances and somebody who is a narcissist who might be controlling those finances, that adds a whole nother layer. So today we are going to dive into a really important conversation. Sometimes it's even painful to hear. It is how narcissists affect money and finances in relationships. And I hear it all the time. Money is one of those topics that is the absolute top when people are talking about divorce or separation. It is a huge conflict in marriage. And when you add in any type of narcissistic behavior, any tendencies, you are really amplifying the chaos. So the financial fallout can really be devastating. So that's why it's important for us to talk about it, be transparent about it, and be open about it, and give you as much information as possible about it. Because there's always a way that you can take back your power and move forward with clarity and with confidence. I'm so honored today to again have Melissa Murphy Pavone. She is a CFP and CDFA who knows far too well what these narcissistic traits look like when it comes to finances in divorce. So today we're going to focus on 3 of the main issues when it comes to narcissistic behaviors and 3 solutions, because we never want to just give you the problems. We always want to be able to give you some way to work through it and start to create those small solutions that will make sense for you. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today. And let's jump in.
Thanks for having me today, Liz.
Of course. And I always just want to start out with any sort of caveat that we need to do. And what we're talking about today is narcissistic traits, narcissistic behaviors when it comes to finances. What we are not doing today is talking about narcissistic personality disorder, which is actually on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders as an actual personality disorder. I'm not talking about diagnosing anyone. You are not talking about diagnosing anyone. What we're talking about are those traits that come through that can start to erode a relationship, destroy a marriage, and seep into the finances. So we just want to be very clear that that is not where we're going.
Absolutely. Like relationships, there's narcissistic traits often look like the need to control the money, right? Keeping a partner in the dark about finances, rewriting the narrative to make one person feel weak or dependent. And generally, they put themselves and their needs first at the expense of the partner or the family. And a lot of people don't even recognize it, right? That's their normal. So when we talk about narcissism today and money, we're talking about those unhealthy patterns of the financial control and manipulation. And some of you guys, as you're watching this, you might have these like aha moments, right? And it could be unnerving sometimes to be like, oh my God, how did I not see it? Right? Like, oh my God, she's talking about me and my relationship and my spouse. So we're just framing the episode as today we're going to talk about how narcissists use money to control. And like Liz said, there's 3 really big financial problems, but the best part is we're going to give you 3 solutions that we can do together to help take the control back. And that's where it is, because we all have the power within us. And really just recognizing it and the power of the pause to really find the solution. Regardless if you're thinking about divorce, but especially if you're thinking about divorce and what different options you have. And we're going to talk a little bit about collaborative divorce, which Liz and I both love so much, and just how a financial expert can really help there.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of, that aha moment, because sometimes people will come, and I know you've had this experience too. They'll come to you and say, how the heck did this happen? It started out where, I'll take over the bills, or he just took over that one account. And then slowly but surely, years later, I don't have any access to the money, or there's complete financial abuse. And people feel a lot of shame in that. So, I hope that anyone listening here knows that that's a pattern that's very deliberate. It's not your fault, right? So I don't want anyone to feel ashamed or feel bad about the way it happened. It happened that way deliberately. It was designed that way. So if you have an aha moment, this is your chance to, like Melissa said, take that pause, start to put the pieces together, slow bites, and don't feel any sense of shame. So let's talk about ways that people can start to move forward on that path forward as far as recognizing it and moving forward. So let's talk about what are the three ways that narcissists really use money, whether it is in a relationship where someone's getting divorced or not, because you don't have to be getting divorced to recognize these patterns. But if you are thinking about divorce, for sure, start honing in on this.
Absolutely. So the number one is that financial darkness, that keeping you in the dark. And like you said, you might not necessarily realize that it was intentional, right? It could have just
Hmm.
been, oh, hey, I'm going to pay the bills, or my name's on the mortgage, or you don't have to worry about that, or focus on this and I'll focus on that. And this is, my job. Um, and somehow one person has all control, right? They know all the financial professionals, they know all the passwords, the account numbers, the statements, and the other person is left uninformed. And that's, I see it often when people, start the process, right? And that document discovery, they're like, I don't even know who my mortgage is with. And that's that, okay,
Hmm.
and back in the day, right, we could just say, okay, go check the mail, get home early, check the mail, get your mortgage statement. But in today, in our society of everything being electronic and digital, the mortgage statement's not coming in the mail. Nothing's coming in the mail except, political flyers. So you need to know where those things are. And it's hard, right? I always say, like, I'm married and I can't get into my own accounts, let alone like break into my husband's accounts, right? Like with the
Yeah.
two-factor authentication. So it's trickier than it was. Um, but and you can see depending upon where you are in that relationship, but people sometimes withhold the account logins or have, passwords, or hiding the assets or the debts that you don't know about. And just kind of putting it like, oh, you don't have to worry about this. It happens often, and it seems innocent at first, right? And that's why you don't necessarily recognize it, because you don't see the ill intent there. Um, but eventually you become powerless or like anxious and sometimes really dependent upon that other person. And for them, it's that lack of financial clarity that I think is like really scary.
And that's a huge issue. Not knowing, that sort of you don't know what you don't know. Because if you don't know who's holding your mortgage, is the mortgage in default? Is the mortgage paid off? Is there a huge debt on it? Did somebody did the partner take out a second loan? You have no idea. So that fear of not knowing is real when you're in that type of situation. So what do you think some of the best solutions are for people who are sort of in that position of, really feeling like they're frightened because they just really don't know?
Yeah. A lot of people come to me as a CDFA and as a certified divorce financial analyst. You really help kind of fill out that financial puzzle, right? And we might not have all the answers, but I or another CDFA can give you a list of documents that you'll need, and we can help start to find it, right? Your tax return is a good one. If you file married filing joint, that has a lot of information on it. You might not be able to
Hmm.
understand it or read it, but if you bring it to me, I can help, and we can kind of get some clues on where things are and what they
And
are
I just want to
attempting.
say that's a really good first step, right? That's a really great point
Yeah,
because if you filed it, you're entitled to that, right?
absolutely.
Whether somebody shares it with you or not.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even know, like, oh, did I file the tax return? Because, there's e-signatures or something. But if you know who the CPA is, if you know who the tax preparer is, you can call up and say, hey, I'm so and so. I'd like a copy of my last 2 years' tax returns. No questions asked. You can pick them up. They can email them to you. There might be some email code or security
Hmm.
because of confidential information, but you have a right to those and you don't have to be scared or fearful. The other thing I always suggest my clients do is to run their annual credit report. And you can do that one time annually for free, get a full credit report. You see what's open in your name. A lot of times people don't know what they owe, right? Are they on the mortgage? Is the car, just because you drive a car doesn't mean that car yours, doesn't mean the loan is in your name, doesn't mean it's registered in your name. So really just like that credit report will show. Sometimes you have an old Home Depot credit card that you got a dishwasher on that you forgot about and now there's $20,000 that are still owed on it. And you're like, we paid that off a while ago. So it's those sort of digging that we can do together that we can help kind of reconstruct that financial
Yeah.
picture, which is really important. And if you are going through divorce or you're thinking about it, mediation and collaborative is the best out of court option. And because of that, all this information has to be disclosed, right? We have
Yeah.
to make sure that we're not hiding assets and it's not tolerated within that process. So that full disclosure of financial documents is there so that we have access to it. And you want access to it in order to make those financial decisions. And then through this process, I really have an emphasis on just financial financial literacy and education so that you know what you have to do after this, right? This is like, we got to know where you are, we got to know where you're heading, and we need to be able to kind of like take those baby steps in order for you to do this on your own should you lead that way, like towards divorce. So there are tools, there are professionals, and there are processes that can help guide you there, with a little bit of help, because it does seem really overwhelming at first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, right? Giving people the tools to start. And two things that you said there, right? That you don't need anyone's permission for. You don't need to go and ask your partner. You can get your free credit report, like you said, you're entitled to that, and you can get your tax returns. Two excellent places to start. So those are two tools that you can use, even if your partner is still sort of trying to keep you in the dark. So that leads us to why, ways that a narcissist can use money against their partner. So let's talk about those tools and ways that that helps you, maybe move forward, and ways that they want to continue to control you.
Yeah. I mean, another problem that I always see is kind of like the false narrative, right? Like they twist the financial story. They tell you something that is not true, but you don't have any of the facts, right? So you believe what they tell you. If your spouse tells you, "Oh yeah, we're great. We're, living high on the hog and we can go on this vacation and we can, buy this nice car." But you might not know the true financial picture, or the opposite of, you can't handle money, right? And those money stories, or if you leave, you'll have nothing, you'll be broke without me, or we can't afford this, not knowing that there is that cushion or savings, but maybe it's not in your name, right? Maybe you don't have control over it, and maybe that's on purpose. So sometimes there's like that overstatement of, kind of keeping up with the Joneses and like, we're doing okay. And sometimes there's that understatement of like, oh no, like, we're not making ends meet, or we can't do this. So it's either way, it's wrong, right? It's not the truth. And you're entitled to the truth, right? Like you're entitled to know what's coming in. We spoke about this last time. I always say like the 5 numbers that you need to know is the assets that you have, which is what you own, the liabilities, which is what you owe, your income, which is what you earn or your spouse, and your expenses are what you guys spend. And then in addition to that, your credit report, your credit score, to know like what your buying capability is. So once you have those numbers, then you can actually see a clear picture, because sometimes what you see is not actually what's
Hmm.
accurate, right? And I think that goes for all of life, right? We talk about like the Instagram versus the reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. And I love what you said, that you're entitled to it, right? Because I think people forget, or people don't know, because the idea of marriage is just such a romantic notion that people forget you are an economic unit in the eyes of the state, and you are entitled to know all of the debt, all of the liability, all of the income, all of the assets. You have a right to know all of that. Now, does that mean that your partner is sharing it? They might not be, and that's what we're talking about here. But it's really a good thing for anyone to remember. You're entitled to that information. If they don't share it, that's on them. But that doesn't mean that them telling you, oh, you don't need to know that, or you're not entitled to that. That's not true. You absolutely should know it, because, like you said, maybe there's a lot more money than they pretend that there is, and like, oh, you can't handle it. You can't. We're not going to share that with you, because you're not able to handle the finances, or they're just trying to squirrel money away for something else, or the exact opposite, like you said, they're spending and spending and spending, and there's literally nothing to fall back on. So you have no idea what that is, but you do have a right to know that. And I have seen with clients of my own that sometimes many, many years into the relationship, like we were talking about earlier, they sort of open their eyes and they're like, what the heck is going on financially? And I actually have no idea. So what's maybe a solution to help them start to overcome that? Because it's going to be baby steps, but there are certainly some solutions that they can start working toward.
Absolutely. And I think like that first step of like acknowledging like, okay, I'm here and I'm going to do the work, because it's easy to kind of just keep a blind eye, right? And keep status quo and things going where they are. But if you have that gut feeling like something's not right, like trust it. Trust that gut feeling.
Always trust your gut.
Always, right? And
Yeah.
like no, and then when you start to see it, right, then things start to make sense. Like, huh, yeah, actually, like, and that you start to connect the dots, because the truth is a lot of times you're not focused on it, right? You're focused on your career or your family or your health. Like there could be a lot of other things that you're focused on, and that's okay. And they use that against you. So being
Hmm.
able to like now shine the light on this, like we are now taking a light and we're looking under the hood. We're going to see what kind of shape are we in, right? Like
Like it or not.
right? Like we're
Yep.
here and you can't unsee it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And have that CDFA, have that financial professional with you, because it could be overwhelming, right? The numbers are just a lot, and you might see them and you might not even know what you're looking at. But if you find it and you have that financial accountability partner, that financial ally to kind of help go through, we can figure out a solution, right? Whether it's there's a lot of debt, whether there's a gambling problem, whether there's, a extramarital affair. Like we can get over it if we just get to the bottom of it. And I think that's the
Hmm.
hard part. And we can do that accounting work together, right? To like do the income, do the budget. Like, I don't like to use the word budget. I like to say cash flow because it's very fluid, it comes and it goes. But just do those projections for you and your family, and to make sure that you do have a good handle on those numbers and what those numbers mean, because you might not know, and that's okay, because you don't have a degree in finance, and but I do, and I'm happy to teach you. And if you're willing to learn, we can do it together. And I think that's powerful, because it's overwhelming emotionally and financially. Like there's two battles here, right? That there's that emotional shame that you talked about earlier, that I really just want to like acknowledge it and just like throw it out. Like, okay, we got here. Doesn't matter how we got here. Let's move forward. Like we're going through
Hmm.
it and we'll go through it together. And I think that's how why collaborative divorce is so great, because they have that teamwork, right? Of that we're not going to make decisions until we have all the facts, and we're going to work together as a team, cooperatively, collaboratively, to get to those facts while still being empathetic with the emotions.
Yeah. And I love, because you mentioned before, like things are really bad, right? If things are really bad, when you start to look under the hood and you realize, oh my gosh, this engine is blown, that doesn't mean you can't rebuild it, because you can be completely at the bottom, which sometimes people are. Like you said, someone could be completely in the dark as to the finances. And then when they actually discover it, there's nothing there. The retirement account is wiped out. The house has 3 mortgages on it. Like there's tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and it feels so overwhelming. But knowing, that knowledge is power, and knowing that you can, in small ways, start to move forward, that alone, I think, is just so refreshing for people to know that that's possible.
Yeah, it really is. And I think having that partnership, right, to do it together,
Yeah.
because you do feel alone in this journey when these things start to like crumble, right? And the house of cards starts falling. It's hard. Um
Yeah.
because of the emotions, right? And because of the financial reality of it, but know that like you can do it. We can come back from it, and having that financial professional look at it, I have the ability, right, to zoom out. I'm empathetic, right? I know what you're going through and I can honor that and give you that safe space. But I have the ability to zoom out and to say how the decisions that you're about to make are going to impact your life 5, 10, 20 years down the line.
Yep.
And you're just focusing on like today.
Hmm.
So it's that ability to have that partner that is able to look for your future, which I think is really important and powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that the idea of getting educated and, making sure that they have a partner like you, getting their finances together and starting to take those baby steps, it's really important, especially for anyone who's been in this type of relationship. That can feel scary. That can feel completely, like you're out of your element, right? Like a fish out of water kind of thing, but you can do it, right? Slow, easy baby steps. It can be done. And it's very, very important. And the narcissist doesn't want their partner to be enlightened, right? They like them to be in the dark. That's how they continue their control. So that leads us to issue number 3. So tell us about issue number 3, and let's talk about the solutions.
Yeah. So the third issue is really that financial weakness and keeping the spouse very dependent. And that could be a couple of different ways. It could be, on the income, right? Like if they don't work, oftentimes, after the kids are out of the house, sometimes people say, like, I want to go back to work. We can have like a 2 income household. And sometimes it's shut down, like, oh no, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense financially. We'd have to hire a babysitter or
Mhm.
a nanny. And so sometimes you have to think, like, is this really a financial decision or is it a control decision, to kind of to have that. And I've had healthy, relationships say, nope, it doesn't make sense financially, but
Mhm.
maybe part-time work is an option, right? Like so that you can work while the kids are in school or during those time periods. But narcissists want their partner to be financially weak, not have their own money, not have their own credit cards. So if it's like you have spending limits or you have an
Yep.
allowance, limiting that access to like where the resources are and the information, right? We talked about like not having access to where things are, but not also having access to the money, like having to say, oh, hey, we need groceries, we need clothes, we need this, or there's a big
Mhm.
purchase. And I'm not saying it should just be a free for all because there needs to be some communication between the two of you in all relationships. But if you're starting to say, hey, yeah, actually, I don't know where this is, or I don't know how much is in our savings, or I don't know if my name is on the savings account, or where did that tax return go? Like all of those things, these are red flags. And these are the flags that you want to see, like, hey, am I too dependent? Right. And that dependency leads to fear. And it's the fear of the unknown. If I leave, how will I survive? How can I afford
Mhm.
this? We're barely making ends meet now. How are we going to have 2 houses? I don't work. You have all the assets. So, like, those are the things that they want you to feel trapped and
Yeah.
powerless.
Yeah. And a lot of times they will even use that and make sure that how are you going to survive without me, right? So that that feeling is real because the narcissist is perpetuating it and they're making sure that you know it, whether they say the words or not. They're making sure that that's how you feel. So, and that again, that fear is real. Not being able to survive, right? Not being able to make ends meet. How am I going to have a roof over my head? Whether you have young children, whether it's just you, no matter what. So, what are some solutions that you can suggest for people who might really be feeling that fear?
Yeah, I really like to stress education, and the education leads to empowerment, right? Like power, knowledge is power. We always say that. And by working with a CDFA, you can really help build that post divorce cash flow. And people don't realize they may be entitled to child support. They may be entitled to alimony or maintenance, right? And so then they might think, okay, what does a part-time job look like? And when you start to have income, then you start to have power, right? And you get to make choices for yourself and for your family. And that I think is very powerful by just knowing like what's on the table and what's off the table. So by having a CDFA kind of go through and say, is this marital? Is this separate? Is this something that could be divided? Am I entitled to some of this? That enlightenment gives you that, okay, there is some hope here, right?
Mhm.
there is an opportunity here, or there is light at the end of the tunnel. You and I talked a lot about the collaborative process and what a powerful shift that can be. Like having a collaboratively trained attorney in your corner, but still abiding by the fact that we're going to do this respectfully and not in court, right? We're not going to let a judge decide what happens to our children and our assets. Having that financial neutral, having like a parenting specialist there to prioritize that respect and that communication is so powerful, because you might not have your voice, but the professionals in that room will help you find that voice. And I think that's really the beauty of the collaborative practice. And then as far as like taking actionable steps, is you'll learn to really see what you spend, right? What you need to live off of, to have your own bank account, to have your own credit card, and even your own savings account. And it seems so minuscule in the scheme of things in the beginning, but just having your own debit card, your own credit card, your own relationship with a banker at your local bank, like those are powerful steps to your own financial future. And I think it's really important to take those steps. And it could be nerve-wracking, right? There's that fear, there's that shame, but when you shed it and you kind of step into your own and you have that power, you stand a little taller. And that's what I love to see about going through this process with people.
Yeah, and I think that's really great. People in these relationships just starting to come out of it, gaining that independence, having that bank account, not at the same bank, not at the same banking institution where maybe you've banked as a family, where your soon to be ex is banking. You want something that's completely yours. If you have $20 to put in that account, start your account with $20 and put in $20 a week. It adds up quickly and it's so empowering. Like you said, it's yours, right? It's only yours. Only your name is on it. And your narcissistic spouse has no right to look at it. And that's huge. You can gain more money over time and put it in there, but you gain more independence and more power in yourself and more belief in yourself. So I love that. Generally, the financial abuse is connected to this overall pattern of coercive control. It's not just about the finances. The financial portion is a big piece of it, but there are other signs as well, whether it's who you can talk to, where it is that you're going, what time you're going to be home, those kind of things. But it really comes out in money because it's used as a weapon. Money is for sure used as a weapon in a way to keep people down, specifically women. Historically women, not only, but historically it has been women who have been held in that position, and it's hard. So going out there and getting a job, opening that bank account, all really important. And you were talking about these alternative ways to get divorced, like collaborative divorce. We are absolute cheerleaders and absolute proponents of the collaborative divorce model because, like you said, Melissa, everything is on the table, just the way it would be in court. Everything's going to be disclosed. However, we're not going to burn your money and blow tens of thousands of dollars in court when we can work it out here and start to create a path forward for you that actually makes sense. So give us a little bit of, maybe a solid example of how that collaborative process in your eyes just is different from litigation or is better than litigation.
I honestly just think collaborative divorce is so much more time efficient and cost effective. And I think there's a myth that like, oh, there's 4 financial professionals. Like, how is that going to be less expensive, right? No one's saying divorce is cheap. There's no one saying that, right?
Right.
But having 4 professionals, you think that it would be more expensive versus just having an attorney, right? But I'm going to debunk that myth because the mental health professional focuses on keeping everyone respectful, right? And keeping everyone's emotions in check so that we can have that communication. Because when the communication breaks down, we're not making any progress, right? So
Yep.
having them there is like the glue. And then having a financial, CDFA as the financial is so important because if not, you're both paying separately to do the same financial discovery. So you're going to have to go through your net worth statement and you're going to have to go through your net worth statement and you're going to have to go through discovery and you're going to have to find all this and we're going to ask for the same things and you're going to have some and I'm going to have some and we're going to go back and forth and that's hours wasted. And
Mhm.
no offense, and I know you won't get any offense, but like not all attorneys, right, know how to read these documents. Just like I wouldn't know how to read a motion. This
Mm-hmm.
financial statements, that's my love language, right? So I can look at a financial statement and know right away what to look for, what's important, what's not important, and see what kind of bucket it falls into. And so that's kind of my sweet spot. So by having me do that for both parties, how great is that you guys are sharing in that expense? It's taking less time and less money. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's where we're making progress, because I think a lot of people, and you know this more than all of us, Liz, like people complain so much, not so much about that how expensive divorce costs, but how long it takes, right? Like that we don't feel
Yeah.
like we're making progress. And so by having that financial family facilitator there, that financial professional as a neutral there, we're ready to come to the table, right? Because we have all of our ducks in a row. We have everything out, we have facts. And now we can really get to that negotiation and see what's
Yeah.
important to both parties and find that custom solution. And that's what I think people don't understand, that it's not just, hey, okay, it's 50-50, right? We're just going to divide it in half. It doesn't have to be that way. In collaborative divorce, you have the ability to craft a solution that works for your family. If there is a gambling addiction
Yeah.
or a substance abuse addiction, we can have that be part of the plan, right? To have, you can still get divorced by letting your spouse still have treatment, right? But by having safeguards in place. So there's all the beauty of this. And the kicker is that it's all private. This is not going on court record. This is not public record. This is keeping the integrity of your family very private within this collaborative group. So I think that's something that not a lot of people think of,
Mm-hmm.
and they just rush to hire an attorney
Yeah.
and to start the battle. And it doesn't have to be a battle.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love everything that you said. And again, we're such huge proponents of it because we have our whys, right? Our parents and our stories about why divorce is so important. But also as professionals, we see it every day. So we see people spiraling down that drain when they run to litigation, and we see people actually building new futures when they choose the collaborative model. So we see it every day. So we know that it's true. And talking about the time wasted and the money wasted, what we're talking about today is narcissistic traits and the way people behave in these relationships. People often think, and I hear even professionals, and a lot of times even collaborative professionals, maybe not anyone that we work with directly, but I've heard many of them say, if there's a narcissistic um, relationship or there's a narcissistic abuser, collaborative will never work. I will absolutely be the first one to say, I'm here to debunk that. Because if you think that being in court is going to be more helpful, I assure you it's not. Because I've litigated for many years. The courts are not there to protect anyone. They are not there to do the full discovery that you're going to be doing. It's okay, okay, counsel, do your discovery and be done with it. They're not going to check off the list and say, oh, did you contact this bank? Did you get a mortgage statement? Did you find out about the credit? That's not their concern. The court says, get this done, attorneys, put it on my desk so I can sign it and I can get you out of here. And the attorneys, like you said, we are not trained. We are not skilled at the finances. So for us to have to get to the bottom of it, we have to start issuing subpoenas. We have to start doing discovery. When you were talking about the costs, all I'm thinking in my head is ticking off how much that's going to cost. And then you might come up with documents that show there's nothing. So now you have to pay for all of that and you still have very little to show for it. So it's really important for people to understand that being in court, regardless of the status of your relationship, regardless of how you get along, regardless of this narcissistic tendency of your soon to be ex, you are so much better served, so much better served than being in collaborative than court. Court is the absolute last place that you should be.
I can't agree with you more.
So, so let's just wrap up. We talked about the 3 issues and then the 3 takeaways. And I always like the solutions better than the takeaways, right? So this narcissistic partner keeping you in the dark. Step 1 toward really reclaiming your light and coming out of that darkness is gaining financial clarity, getting the information step by step, piece by piece. Number 2 was this gaslighting and that false narrative. They're going to make you believe anything they want you to believe in order keep control over you, maintain control over you. So getting the facts, knowing what the real numbers are, even if you don't like them, even if it seems very daunting, getting that information is very important. And lastly, keeping you dependent. They like to keep you dependent on them. That's how they maintain control. So your empowerment through financial literacy, extremely important. And the more you can do it, the sooner you can do it, piece by piece, the better off you're going to be. So, Melissa, thank you so much for your insight here today and for always being an advocate in the financial world. And I wanted to turn it over to you for any parting words and tell us about how people can reach you.
Absolutely. I offer free consultations. My company's name is Mindful Divorce Partners. We have a 5 financial red flags in divorce you shouldn't ignore. So if you would like that, please like and follow Divorced In, and we can get you that guide. We can email it to you. And yeah, I would love to talk to you. If you know someone that's going through this, or if you think there might be some red flags, feel free to book a complimentary consultation. I offer a financial clarity package, which really is a 3-hour limited scope that helps you get organized. If you're quietly thinking about divorce and don't know where to start, let's start shining some light on those numbers and get you prepared financially.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I will just say that I have worked with Melissa many times and you could not be in better hands. So certainly reach out to her. If you know anyone else who is experiencing any sort of financial insecurity or financial darkness and they need to come into the light, please contact Melissa and send them her information as well, because that's where we start. We start with education. We start with knowledge. Knowledge is power. So thank you everyone out there for watching. We talk about it all the time. We talk about important topics that maybe not everyone is talking about, maybe that are not popular, that are not sexy, but they're needed. They're meaningful. And when we can start to come to solutions, start to shed some light on it, that's where your power shines. So to that end, we'd love to hear from you and find out about any other financial topics that you'd like to talk about. So drop a comment, send us a message, and let us know what's important to you and what financial topics can we start diving deep into. And don't forget to subscribe and again, share this information with anyone else who might be going through a divorce, thinking about separation, just having relationship issues or financial issues. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. See you next time.